This is the Medical Minutes Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Your source for the latest news, updates, information, and more from the world of health and medicine. Now, here's Wish TV's medical reporter, Dr. Mary Gillis.
From Wish TV, I'm medical reporter Dr. Mary Gillis, and this is Medical Minutes on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Emmy-winning actress Emilia Clarke, best known for her role in the HBO hit series Game of Thrones, says she suffered not one, but two aneurysms back in her early days of shooting. In an interview, Clarke says some parts of her brain no longer function as they used to. She now struggles with memory loss. As an actress, she forgets her lines, and at times, even her own name. In this week's episode, I spoke with Michele Gliddon, stroke program manager at Eskenazi Health, about the actress's condition and why 20% of all aneurysms result in death. Our conversation is next. Well, Michele, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Not a problem.
We have an actress, Emilia Clarke, star of Game of Thrones. She says while she was filming the hit series, she suffered two aneurysms. So first, tell me about what is an aneurysm?
The short answer to that is an aneurysm is a weakening of one of the walls in an artery in the body. She suffered from aneurysms in her brain, which that's where most of them occur. However, they can occur elsewhere in the body as well.
And she was in her 20s. That's kind of surprising to me. I don't know. Does it depend on age? Who is at risk? And is this avoidable?
In some ways, it's avoidable. With her being young and otherwise healthy, I can make an assumption that it runs in her family because there is a strong genetic component to it. But without knowing her or her case, I cannot say for sure that that was the cause of hers. Other things that can cause it, and this goes more into the older population, is if you have untreated high blood pressure, if you smoke or have consistent use of drugs, they can all weaken the blood vessels in your body.
All right. So we're talking lifestyle factors here. So
Absolutely.
Okay. And then Michele, what are symptoms? Is this something that suddenly just comes on and we have no signs or symptoms, or are there warning signs? Aneurysms
typically do not have symptoms. When they rupture, that's when you have symptoms. And symptoms can be mild as far as like just a really bad headache, all the way to collapsing and going unconscious into a coma. 85% of all aneurysms are found incidentally, like during imaging, like if they're looking at something else, or during an autopsy, sadly to say. And then 10% of ruptured aneurysms, these patients don't even make it to the emergency department.
And I'm sorry, say that again. I missed that last part. So these are potentially life-threatening or deadly.
Absolutely. About 20% of all ruptured aneurysms, the patient does pass away because of it.
Ruptured means what?
Ruptured means that aneurysm or the blood vessel actually breaks open. It's almost like if you have a water balloon and it pops. It kind of goes like that. And if that aneurysm ruptures or it pops, the mortality rate does go up significantly.
And as a result, I'm thinking there's bleeding in the brain, and there's no way to reverse that.
That is correct. The blood gets into the subarachnoid space of the brain, and it just depends on how severe it is and how long it takes for somebody to get treatment. Usually we can kind of help the symptoms, but we can't reverse anything.
It is not reversible. Okay. And so this, Miss Clarke says that she has trouble remembering her lines and even her name sometimes. So I'm not certain. I know you didn't treat Emilia, but what part of the brain do you suspect was affected? And are there certain parts of the brain that are more affected than others? And if so, what can happen as a result?
It depends on the location of the aneurysm, to be honest. If she's having memory issues, it was probably in the memory cortex of the brain. Some patients have motor function issues, difficulty walking or moving their arms. Other people have speech problems. So like I said, it just depends on the location of the aneurysm and the severity of the rupture at the time.
And if the aneurysm is something that happens, is there a way to regenerate the brain in those areas?
Regeneration of the brain is not something typically that occurs, but what can happen is you can improve your symptoms by almost remapping the brain, and that's usually done with physical therapy or speech therapy to kind of help get stronger.
And Michele, anything else you want to add about this topic?
If you know that there's a family history, or if you're a higher risk, or if you've been diagnosed with an aneurysm, they can be surgically fixed prior to rupture. And these are done in a minimally invasive surgical suite, similar to like if you have a cardiac procedure, they do a puncture like in the groin or in the wrist. And so they can be treated prior to rupture.
So they can take the clot out before it ruptures?
Yes.
Okay. Wow, this was so interesting. Thank you so much for your insight on this. I really appreciate talking to you, as always.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me, Mary.
This has been Medical Minutes from Wish TV. I'm medical reporter Dr. Mary Gillis. Be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast and check out new updates every week. You can also learn more at wishtv.com and when you follow Wish TV on Facebook.
This is the Medical Minutes Podcast with Wish TV's Dr. Mary Gillis. Be informed and stay connected for the latest news and information when you like, subscribe, and follow this podcast, and discover even more from the All Indiana Podcast Network. Now at allindianapodcast.com.